Hello everyone, today we're going to talk about something most people will never dare say out loud. What would happen if you stopped lying to yourself? Picture this, you wake up in a bedroom that looks just right. The lighting is soft. Your phone is already buzzing with praise. The scent of fresh coffee drifts in from a kitchen you barely use but show off often. And the mirror? Oh, the mirror gives you back a version of yourself you carefully curated, filtered not with software, but with little self-deceptions you've stacked for years. But here's the twist, you probably won't survive your own truth. Not at first. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I do here. Also, post your location and the current local time in the comments. I want to know where my people are tuning in from. Now, let's get comfortable, and let's get started today. I didn't know I was lying to myself until the illusion started to flicker, just a little at first, like static behind glass. You know those moments when you're brushing your teeth and you catch your own eyes in the mirror? There's a split second where something behind your face looks at you. That's what happened to me. And it was awful. Because the room I was living in, it was fake. Perfectly designed, absolutely functional, but hollow. The trophies on the shelf? Bought on eBay. The minimalist desk? Never used. And the journals stacked in the corner? Empty. It felt like I was living inside a version of my Pinterest board, and worse, I was the one who put it all together. This wasn't some grand Truman Show betrayal. No one else was in on it. Just me. I was the architect, the actor, the audience. I lied when I said I liked kale smoothies. I lied when I said I loved the hustle. I even lied when I laughed at memes I didn't get, because not laughing would have felt like being left behind. You know what's weird? The human brain is wired to prefer consistency over truth. There's this thing called cognitive dissonance. When our actions and beliefs don't match, the brain panics a little. And instead of changing our behavior, we often just adjust the story we tell ourselves to match it. Like, sure, I hate my job, but it pays well and I'm lucky to have it. That's not gratitude. That's panic in a tuxedo. Anyway, that morning, fake room, fake mirror, real panic, I finally asked myself, who am I performing for? The answer, of course, was nobody. Nobody was watching. That might be the most terrifying thing of all, realizing you've spent years performing a version of yourself no one even asked for. There was no director yelling, "Cut!" No audience applauding. Just the quiet hum of a ceiling fan and the realization that I'd been lying, politely. I tried to shrug it off. Made coffee. Scrolled Instagram. Watched a raccoon try to open a door in Texas. Did you know raccoons can remember solutions to tasks for up to 3 years? Wild. Meanwhile, I couldn't remember what joy felt like unless it came with a notification. I sat on the couch and looked around. My bookshelf was filled with titles I never read. Self-help guides, manifestos. The 7 Secrets of Ultra-High Achievers. I read the back covers, sure. Maybe a few highlighted passages. But did I ever apply them? Nope. I liked how they looked more than what they said. Books as decorations. Knowledge as decor. Truth as an accessory. That's when it really landed. I had constructed a version of life that was optimized for external approval. Everything was presentable, nothing was personal. I wore clothes that felt like marketing. My smile had customer service energy. Even my playlists were curated for image, not mood. I wasn't living, I was branding. There's a phrase tossed around in academic psychology circles. Adaptive self-deception. It suggests that lying to yourself might actually help you survive certain things, grief, trauma, heartbreak. It's like an emotional airbag. But I wasn't in a car crash. I was cruising in a vehicle made entirely of air, pretending the road was real. I wish I could say I had a breakthrough in that moment. I didn't. I just sat there, holding a mug of coffee I didn't want, in a living room I didn't recognize, inside a version of myself that was quietly suffocating. Later that day, I went to the mirror again. Same angle, same lighting. But this time, instead of adjusting my hair or squaring my jaw, I just looked. And what I saw wasn't tragic. It wasn't ugly or broken or even disappointing. It was just unfamiliar. Like bumping into a friend you haven't seen in 10 years who's changed just enough that you hesitate before saying their name. I whispered, "Hi." It felt ridiculous. But I meant it. There's this beautiful thing about honesty: it doesn't require volume. You don't have to scream the truth. Sometimes it just needs to be heard once to echo forever. That "hi" wasn't just a greeting. It was a little crack in the set wall. A shimmer of real light peeking in. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. The rest of the day was fog. I didn't do anything heroic. I didn't burn the set down or call my therapist or launch into a new life. I just started noticing. Every time I smiled when I didn't mean it, I noticed. Every time I said, "I'm fine," when I wasn't, I noticed. I didn't correct it yet. I wasn't ready. But noticing? That's how everything begins. Also, fun bonus brain fact: the average human makes about 35,000 decisions a day. Most of them are tiny and unconscious. But if even 1% of those are based on lies you tell yourself, that's 350 small betrayals. Every single day. And you wonder why you feel tired all the time? The lie you tell in the mirror is the softest one, the most polite. It doesn't shout or threaten, it whispers. It wears your face. It uses your voice. And it always says something like, "You're doing fine," or "This is just a rough patch," or my personal favorite, "You're just tired." But deep down, we know. We always know. That morning, standing in front of the mirror again, I tried to smile like I meant it. That half-tilted, Instagram soft smile. The kind of expression you practice once and reuse for years. And it hit me: my face knew the choreography, but my eyes weren't invited to the performance. I looked like a happy stranger. Have you ever noticed how we perform for ourselves? I don't mean taking selfies or recording TikToks, though sure, that too. I mean brushing your teeth like you're in a commercial. Folding your laundry like you're on a minimalism vlog. Even crying, sometimes even that has a script. I wasn't sad. That's the wild thing. I wasn't even depressed, at least not in the classic way. I just felt displaced. Like I was floating slightly to the left of where I was supposed to be. Everything looked fine. I looked fine. But something was slightly out of sync. I'd become a well-lit shadow of a life I never actually built. There's this fact that stuck with me: the average person spends 6 months of their life waiting at red lights. Just sitting there. Not moving. And for some reason, that statistic hit differently that day. Because I felt like I'd been sitting at a red light for years. But instead of waiting for it to change, I'd started painting the red light green and convincing myself I was going somewhere. So I asked myself the weirdest question: what if I just told the truth right now? Not to someone else. Just to the mirror. The truth? I didn't like my job. I didn't hate it, but I didn't care about it either. I stayed because it looked good on paper. Because it was stable. Because my parents could brag about it. Because my LinkedIn was thriving. But me? I hadn't thrived in a while. Another truth: I didn't love who I was dating. They were kind, yes. Attractive, sure. But we were orbiting each other, not meeting. Our conversations were mostly logistical. What time to meet? What to order? What show to binge? We had chemistry like two neutral atoms bumping into each other. Harmless. Forgettable. And maybe the ugliest truth of all: I had no idea who I was when I wasn't being watched. There's a concept debated in philosophy called the observer effect in identity. The idea that we only become who we are through being observed by others. But what happens when the observer is just you? A tired version of you, watching from a place of judgment instead of love? That's what I started realizing. I wasn't looking in the mirror to see myself. I was checking myself. Like a manager inspecting a store before opening. Fix the collar. Adjust the smile. Hide the tired. Look functional. So that morning, instead of adjusting my smile, I did nothing. I just stared. And slowly, the mirror became less of a performance space and more of a truth teller. I didn't look bad. I looked like someone who needed sleep and hadn't had a real conversation in months. I looked like someone who'd been running a marathon they didn't sign up for. I whispered again. You're not fine. And it wasn't a judgment, it was a kindness. Like telling someone they've got spinach in their teeth before a big meeting. Uncomfortable, yes. But necessary. The first time you speak truth to your own reflection, it feels like betrayal. Like you've broken some kind of secret contract to stay polite with yourself. But soon, it becomes relief. Like finally taking off a tight pair of shoes after hours of pretending they didn't hurt. That day, I didn't quit my job. I didn't break up. I didn't throw out my life and go backpacking in Peru. I just told myself the truth, quietly, calmly, completely. I wrote it down. Every single lie I had been living. You're happy. This is just how adulthood feels. It's not that bad. It could be worse. At least you're not alone. That last one stung. Because being not alone isn't the same as being known. And I hadn't felt known in a long, long time. There's something called truth fatigue. A kind of emotional burnout from holding too many contradictions for too long. Psychologists say the brain can only juggle so many conflicting narratives before something gives, either your story or your spirit. I was starting to bend. But here's the cool part. Once I stopped lying, even silently, I felt a strange kind of energy return. Not joy. Not hope. Just presence. Like I was finally back inside my own life. Like the lights had come back on. I went outside. Just walked around the block. No podcast in my ears. No phone in my hand. Just the raw, unscripted hum of the world. A car honked. A dog barked. Someone yelled at a delivery guy. And for the first time in ages, I wasn't analyzing it. I was just there. A neighbor waved. I waved back. No forced smile. No need to appear okay. Just a wave. And it felt enough. The thing about lying to yourself is, it doesn't hurt all at once. It's a slow drip. You don't even notice it until you're parched and you don't know why. But telling the truth? Even quietly? That's water. It's not glamorous. But it saves you. It's weird how good it feels to look busy. You ever notice that? Like, even when nothing's urgent, we sprint through the day with our phones in one hand and a "sorry I've been swamped" excuse in the other. I used to live like that. I wasn't working hard because I had to. I was working hard because I didn't want to stop long enough to hear the silence. And that silence, let me tell you, is not polite. It doesn't clap for your productivity. It doesn't care that you hit inbox 0. It asks the kind of questions that sound like elevator music at first, quiet and ignorable, until you realize it's looping in your brain and driving you slowly insane. Like, do you even like what you do? Or, if no one saw this, would you still be doing it? Or the real monster. Who are you when you're not performing? I worked like someone was watching. But no one was. I mean that both literally and metaphorically. My boss didn't care as long as things got done. My friends barely knew what I did all day. And me? I didn't even know what I was working toward. Promotions? A corner office? A day off I'd spend too tired to enjoy? There's a human intelligence fact I heard once that kind of messed me up. The average adult attention span is now around 47 seconds before switching tasks. 47 seconds. That's less than a microwave burrito takes to cook. And I was living inside that number. Clicking between tabs. Refreshing news I wasn't reading. Starting projects I never finished. Every time I came close to stillness, I sprinted towards something meaningless. It wasn't about the job. It was the performance of productivity. I was addicted to seeming useful. I had routines like rituals. Wake up. Email. Calendar check. Light breakfast with a podcast about hustle culture playing in the background. Send Slack messages that sounded urgent but weren't. Post something vaguely inspirational on LinkedIn, Some faux deep quote about grit. Smile. Respond to emails with, "Let me circle back," or, "Great thought, let's ideate." I was a buzzword machine. A friendly robot. It got so bad, I once booked a Zoom call with myself just to look busy on the calendar. I didn't even laugh when I did it. It felt logical. Honestly, that's how I felt emotionally. Like I was hoarding so much tension, so much false performance, that letting any of it out might just kill me. One afternoon, I sat down to do deep work. I had the timer, the binaural beats playlist, the scented candle. I even put my phone in another room. I was ready to dive in. And I did nothing. Absolutely nothing. I stared at the document on my screen like it was written in ancient Greek. My hands hovered over the keyboard, waiting for the fake spark to show up. You know that fake spark? The one that's supposed to show up just because you cleared your schedule and made a to-do list? Yeah, it ghosted me. I wasn't burned out. I was empty. Big difference. Burnout comes from doing too much. Emptiness comes from doing too much of what doesn't matter. I closed the laptop. I leaned back. And I finally said it out loud. I don't care about this. I had never said that before. Not even to myself. The guilt was immediate, like a reflex. But so was the relief. Like removing a splinter you didn't know had gone deep under your skin. What came next was a little unhinged. I wrote down everything I was doing. Just because. Just because it looked good. Just because everyone else did it. Just because I didn't want to be seen as lazy. Posting morning grind selfies. Taking calls during lunch. Reading productivity books I never applied. Setting goals that weren't mine. Saying yes to projects that drained me. Staying late because leaving on time felt weak. I wasn't working for money, growth, or passion. I was working for appearances. And then it hit me, when people say, "I'm so busy." What they often mean is, "I don't know how to be still without panicking." That was me. Stillness felt like failure. Like standing in the middle of a stage and forgetting my next line. There's this ongoing academic debate in behavioral psychology. Is it fear of failure or fear of being seen failing that drives us more? I lean hard toward the latter. I didn't fear failure, I feared exposure. I feared the moment someone might ask, "Wait, why are you doing any of this?" And I wouldn't have a clean answer. And if you think that realization made me chill out immediately, oh no. I actually tried to work harder for a few days. Like, I'll prove I really want this. But nothing landed. Every win felt flat. Every productivity hack sounded like noise. I couldn't even enjoy my bullet journal anymore, and that's saying something. So I tried something radical. I did less. Not in a lazy way. In a selective way. I stopped doing things that didn't feel like mine. I deleted half my calendar. Declined 3 meetings. Told a colleague, "I'm not the right person for that project." No fake excuses. Just honesty. And guess what? Nobody freaked out. The world didn't collapse. My coworkers didn't brand me as lazy. Some even thanked me for being real. For setting boundaries. It was like telling the truth gave them permission to stop lying too. Later that week, I had an idea. A real one. Not a reheated tweet disguised as insight. A thought that came from stillness, from space. It was small, imperfect, and entirely mine. And it felt better than any productivity hack I'd ever tried. I used to think kindness was my best trait. I really did. I was the one always offering help before being asked, always saying yes, always texting, "Let me know if you need anything." And genuinely meaning it, too. At least, that's what I told myself. But here's the part one never admitted out loud. It wasn't all generosity. It was fear. A very polite, well-dressed kind of fear. Fear that if I said no, I'd be rejected. Fear that if I didn't show up for everyone, no one would show up for me. Fear that if I ever dropped the act, even for a second, I'd be exposed as someone who wasn't that likable after all. It hit me one afternoon during a group chat about weekend plans. I said I'd come to this dinner thing even though I was exhausted, had a deadline breathing down my neck, and would have rather face planted into my laundry pile. But I typed, "Count me in!" Smiling face with smiling eyes, like my fingers were on autopilot. And immediately I felt that sinking, familiar weight. Not regret. Not dread. Just the quiet thud of another yes I didn't mean. Why was I doing this? Again? The obvious answer? I didn't want to disappoint anyone. The less obvious one? I didn't want them to see how small I felt that day. How tired, insecure, and undercooked my soul felt. I used kindness like camouflage. If I looked helpful, useful, agreeable, maybe nobody would notice I didn't know who I was. There's a fact I love from neuroscience. Humans are wired to mirror emotions in others through something called mirror neurons. It's why we wince when someone stubs their toe or feels secondhand embarrassment during awkward moments. But the dark side is this: if you spend your life absorbing and reflecting other people's needs, you can forget you have your own. That was me. I mirrored everything. Someone was sad? I became gentle. Someone was excited? I became their hype machine. Someone was angry? I went into peacemaker mode. I was a walking emotional adapter. The weirdest part? People loved me for it. I was always described as so thoughtful, such a good listener, someone who's always there. But inside, I was exhausted. Like a vending machine of empathy that never got restocked. Here's the thing though: being kind isn't bad. Don't get me wrong. But kindness without boundaries isn't kindness. It's erosion. You slowly chip away at your own edges until you don't recognize your shape anymore. I remember this one time, a friend called me at midnight in tears over a breakup. I sat up in bed, fully alert, made tea like I was on call, and listened for 3 hours. The next day, I had a presentation I bombed because I hadn't slept. Did she appreciate it? Sure. Did she remember it? Probably not. But I do, because I did it not just out of compassion, but from a desperate need to prove I was worth keeping around. Kindness became my currency. Not love. Not honesty. Just strategic helpfulness. If I could solve your problem, maybe you'd never notice I didn't have the courage to talk about my own. It took a while to admit this to myself. I was using kindness as a way to hide. It wasn't that I didn't care. I cared too much. But I also didn't know how to be honest without disappointing someone. And I believed that disappointing someone, even once, would mean losing them entirely. That's how fragile my sense of worth was. Held together by good deeds and emoji-filled responses. Then something happened. I told someone no. It wasn't huge. Just a simple, "Hey, I won't be able to make it tonight. I need to rest." I didn't offer an excuse. I didn't over-explain. I just said the truth. And I braced myself like I'd just thrown a Molotov cocktail into the group chat. I waited for the guilt wave, the silent treatment, the polite unfollow. But it didn't come. They replied, "Totally get it. Take care of yourself." What? You mean I could have been doing that this whole time? That moment changed something. I realized kindness wasn't supposed to cost me my peace. That if my generosity came from fear, it wasn't actually generous, it was a transaction. A quiet, invisible one where I paid with pieces of myself. There's a phrase floating around academic circles right now: performative empathy. It's the idea that some kindnesses are more about perception than connection. And that stung. Because I saw myself in that. The smiling helper. The emotional translator. The person who was more comfortable managing other people's pain than acknowledging their own. What I've learned was, real kindness starts after honesty. Not before it. So I started trying something new. When I didn't want to do something, I said so. When I felt overwhelmed, I admitted it. When I had nothing to give, I didn't pretend I did. And the weirdest thing? People respected it. Some even trusted me more because of it. Turns out, when you stop lying to yourself, you start trusting yourself. And when you trust you, other people follow. I still help people. I still listen. But I don't bleed for it anymore. I don't say yes to stay liked. I don't rearrange my whole life to avoid awkwardness. And I don't apologize for needing rest, space, or solitude. I'm learning that kindness doesn't mean never letting anyone down. It means loving people, and yourself, enough to show up honestly, even when it's awkward, even when it's disappointing. Especially then. There was this one person in my life, let's call them Jamie, who had been around forever. One of those "we've known each other since high school" types. You know the kind. The person who's seen your braces, your bad hair years, your unfortunate fashion phases. They're on your Instagram, your group texts, your birthday invites. It felt like friendship by default. Until one day, I got a text from Jamie. "Dinner this weekend? You pick the place, smiley face." A harmless message. Friendly. Casual. Expected. But I stared at it for a full 5 minutes, my stomach doing that weird twisty thing like it knew something before I did. And that's when the thought showed up, quiet, but razor sharp. I don't actually want to see this person. And just like that, the floor dropped out. I'd spent years maintaining a friendship I wasn't even sure I liked. I thought I had affection, loyalty, memories. What I had, mostly, was inertia. We had a shared history, sure. But no present. And absolutely no future I wanted to imagine. Saying that out loud, even just to myself, felt like a crime. Because no one talks about the friends they don't like. We talk about toxic exes, sure. We'll gossip about weird coworkers. But I don't enjoy this friendship. Feels like breaking some sacred rule. Like we owe people lifelong loyalty just because we've known them a long time. Research suggests most friendships naturally dissolve after about 7 years unless effort is made to sustain them. 7 years? That's it. Friendships have a shelf life, unless both people evolve and re-choose each other. Jamie and I hadn't re-chosen each other in a long time. We'd become echoes of old jokes. We talked in throwback references and recycled memories. But the truth? I didn't like how I felt around them anymore. I felt smaller. Duller. Like I was playing a version of myself I'd outgrown but didn't have the heart to kill off. They made passive digs at the things I cared about. Rolled their eyes when I talked about therapy. Dismissed my work with a shrug. But worst of all, I laughed along with it. I minimized myself to keep the peace. Friendship, when it's real, should be a mirror, not a magnifying glass held over your insecurities until you burn. And yet I kept showing up. Smiling. Making plans. Pretending. Why? Because ghosting felt cruel. Because confrontation felt dramatic. Because I didn't know how to say, "I don't want this anymore," without feeling like a villain. We're told that friendship is sacred. That it's unconditional. That real friends are forever. But that's a dangerous myth. Because sometimes, the friend isn't the villain. Sometimes, they're just not your person anymore. And keeping them around out of guilt only turns your kindness into quiet resentment. There's a weird off-topic fact I stumbled on recently. Rabbits can't vomit. Their digestive system is one way only. Which means anything bad they ingest just stays. And I realized that's how I'd been treating this friendship, just swallowing things I didn't like and pretending they weren't there. But one day, I didn't swallow. I replied to Jamie's dinner text with something I never said to them before. "Hey, I actually need to take a break from making plans right now. Things have felt a little off between us, and I think I need space to figure out what's changed." I stared at the screen before hitting send. My heart was pounding. My palms sweaty like I'd just committed a federal crime. They didn't reply for a day. When they did, it was short. "Okay. Take care." No big blow-up. No dramatic ending. Just the end. And you'd think I'd feel free, but the truth? I mourned it. Quietly, painfully. There's a grief that comes with losing someone who's still alive. Someone who didn't technically do anything wrong. And I cried. Not because I missed them, but because I hated that I'd lied to myself for so long about why I kept them close. Academic psychology has this evolving debate: are friendships more about shared values or shared experiences? In my case, I learned that shared experiences only take you so far. At some point, you have to look across the table and ask, do I even enjoy who you are now? Not who you were. Not what we used to be. Now. I think about that sometimes. How many friendships we keep out of guilt. How many texts we respond to out of habit. How many birthday wishes we send just because Facebook reminds us. And how rarely we stop to ask, do I even feel good around this person? Jamie and I had no big fight. No betrayal. Just a quiet divergence that neither of us admitted until I did. And maybe they were relieved, too. Maybe they'd been pretending, just like I had. Sometimes we both wear the mask so well, we don't realize we're mirroring each other's discomfort. But now, there's room. That's what happens when you stop lying to yourself. You make space. For better friendships. For deeper connections. For people who see the current you, not the archived version from 2013. A few months later, I met someone new at a friend's dinner. We talked for hours. The kind of connection that feels like opening a window you didn't know was stuck shut. They asked real questions. They listened without correcting. They laughed in a way that felt like being with, not laughing at. And I thought, so this is what it's supposed to feel like. You know those movie scenes where two characters lock eyes across a room and everything slows down. The music swells, and you know, this is it, this is love. That never happened to me. What did happen was way more embarrassing. I once mistook shared Spotify playlists and 3 decent conversations for a soulmate connection. Yeah. I really did that. It's kind of terrifying, the way your brain can build a love story from scraps. Like a Pinterest board made from movie clips, late-night texts, and a couple of long hugs. I didn't fall in love with a person. I fell in love with the version of them I made up in my head. We'll call them Riley. Riley wasn't a bad person. Not at all. They were smart, funny, always knew where to get the best tacos. But we were never really together. What we had was this ongoing maybe, a blurry relationship orbit. Texts that danced around intimacy, late-night calls that stopped just short of confession, flirty remarks we both pretended didn't mean anything. It was intoxicating. And entirely one-sided. There's a term in psychology that fits here. Limerence. It's that state of infatuation where you obsessively think about someone and convince yourself they're the one, even if the actual connection is minimal or non-existent. It's not love. It's a story you write, then hand to someone who doesn't even know they're in a novel. I built a whole love story with Riley. In my head, they understood me like no one else. In real life, they forgot my birthday. I imagined us laughing over coffee in Paris. In reality, we barely met up once a month and always split the bill with exact change. But the fantasy? Oh, the fantasy was immaculate. And you know what made it worse? I knew. Deep down, I knew it wasn't real. I could feel it in the way I always had to initiate. In the way I made excuses for them when they disappeared for days. In the way I reread their old texts just to reassure myself the connection still existed. But I didn't want the truth. I wanted the high. The possibility. The almost. Which is its own kind of lie. A soft, beautiful one that says, if you wait long enough, maybe they'll love you back. And so I waited. I stayed. I created versions of them in my mind that made sense of the mess. The distant messages? They're just busy. The emotional unavailability? They're scared. The way I felt like a ghost after I poured my heart out? Maybe I said too much. And just like that, I turned love into a scavenger hunt, constantly searching for scraps to prove what I desperately wanted to believe. I remember this one night, after a particularly empty conversation, I sat on my couch, holding my phone, and just stared. No music. No distractions. Just silence and the awful, obvious realization, they're not coming. Not emotionally. Not romantically. Not in the way I'd hoped for. And still, I waited another month. Because that's what you do when you're in love with a mirage. You keep walking toward it, even as it keeps moving just out of reach. Did you know there's a frog in the Amazon that mimics the sound of toxic species to avoid being eaten, even though it's totally harmless itself? It's called Batesian mimicry. That was Riley. They looked like love, sounded like love, but weren't. And I mistook mimicry for meaning. Eventually, it all unraveled in the gentlest way. They texted something vague and emotionally vacant like, "Sorry I've been MIA, things have just been nuts lately." And I finally didn't reply. Not out of anger. Not to be petty. But because I'd run out of room to lie to myself. I wasn't heartbroken. Not in the dramatic, tissue-soaked way I'd prepared for. I was just relieved. Like I'd been holding my breath for months and suddenly remembered how to exhale. But the grief still came. Not for them, but for the version of me who believed so hard in a love that wasn't real. I grieved the girl who thought if she just loved harder, better, more quietly, she'd be chosen. There's an ongoing debate in academic circles about whether unrequited love is actually love at all. Some argue it's projection. Others say it's just incomplete. Personally, I think it's real, but only for one person. And that makes it even lonelier. And here's the kicker: when I finally told my friend the full story, how little Riley gave, how much I imagined, she just looked at me and said, "Oh, I thought you knew they didn't feel the same." Everyone else saw it. I was the only one still in the theater long after the credits rolled. After Riley, I swore I'd be done with, almost, love. No more half-baked maybe romances. No more mind-reading. No more inventing storylines based on potential. I didn't want potential anymore, I wanted proof. So I wrote myself a rule: if I have to wonder whether they like me, I assume they don't. If I have to chase clarity, I walk away. It's not bitter. It's boundaries. Months later, I met someone new. Someone simple. Not in the boring way, simple in the clear way. They liked me. They told me. They followed up. No mystery. No ambiguity. It wasn't fireworks, it was sunlight. Warm, consistent, real. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was auditioning for affection. I just showed up. And that was enough. The funny thing about bad habits is that we rarely call them what they are. We dress them up, minimize them, rename them like misbehaving pets. I'm just decompressing. It's my little guilty pleasure. Everyone does it. But after a while, I had to admit the truth: these weren't habits. They were rituals. And they weren't about pleasure, they were about avoidance. It started small. An extra hour of YouTube before bed. Scrolling TikTok until my thumb went numb. Eating a family-sized bag of chips at midnight while standing in the kitchen, staring into the fridge like it was going to give me advice. Nothing too dramatic. Just small, forgettable, manageable little choices, stacked high enough to block the door to any kind of self-awareness. I told myself I was unwinding. But what I was really doing was hiding. From silence. From emotion. From the truth I already knew but didn't want to face. A human intelligence fact that haunts me is: the average person checks their phone 96 times a day. That's once every 10 minutes. And we're not even aware we're doing it most of the time. We reach for our phones like they're talismans, like they'll shield us from thinking too hard, from feeling too much. I wasn't bad at discipline. I was just really, really good at distraction. And then there was the food. I didn't overeat because I was hungry. I overate because I didn't want to feel. Because chewing was easier than crying. Because feeling full, even uncomfortably so, was better than feeling empty. I wasn't nourishing myself. I was filling silence with crunch. It's wild how we can rationalize these things. I told myself I deserved that third slice of pizza because I'd had a rough week. I needed that extra hour of mindless scrolling because I was stressed. I earned that binge watch because I was catching up on culture. But if I was honest, I didn't even enjoy most of it. It was just noise. White noise to drown out the ache I couldn't name. So I built routines that kept me just busy enough. I'd wake up and immediately reach for my phone, not to connect, but to disconnect. I'd snack all day, not out of hunger, but habit. I'd plan to read a book and end up watching 3 hours of video essays about topics I didn't even care about. All of it was camouflage. A way to seem fine, while everything inside was quietly screaming. One night, I tried to sit in silence for 5 minutes. Just 5. No phone. No music. No distractions. I lasted 2.5 before my legs started twitching and my brain started throwing random trivia at me like, whatever happened to the guy who invented Beanie Babies? Seriously? That's what you bring me in a moment of peace. Because that's the thing. When you stop distracting yourself, your brain doesn't immediately give you epiphanies. It gives you clutter. Random memories. Lingering guilt. That thing you said in a meeting 5 years ago. The look your friend gave you when you canceled plans last minute. The quiet realization that you don't know what you're doing with your life. So yeah? Distraction felt easier. And it was. Until it wasn't. There came a day when none of my usual tricks worked. The food didn't comfort me. The scrolling felt hollow. The background noise was louder than my own thoughts. I had maxed out my avoidance techniques, and all I had left was myself. Unfiltered. Unsoftened. And I didn't know what to do with that. So I tried something new. I did nothing. I mean literally nothing. I sat on my couch, lights off, no music, no phone. I just sat. My brain panicked like I'd forgotten to keep swimming. But I stayed there. Let the anxiety swell and pass like a wave. Let the ache rise without trying to snack it away. I didn't judge. I didn't fix. I just noticed. And then, something shifted. It wasn't a grand enlightenment. It was a flicker. A quiet, almost imperceptible sense of self. Like I was finally sitting with myself, not just running from me. That night, I journaled for the first time in months. I wrote things that surprised me. Ugly things. Honest things. Like, I don't know what joy feels like anymore. And, I'm scared I'm wasting my life pretending to be fine. And even, I don't think I love myself, not really. And that hurt. But it also helped. There's a phrase being debated right now in academic wellness circles. Addiction to avoidance. It's not a clinical diagnosis, but a framework for understanding how we use behaviors, not substances, to run from ourselves. I think about that a lot. Because it's not about laziness. It's about fear. Fear of facing our unedited lives. The next day, I deleted a few apps. Nothing radical. Just the ones that made me feel worse instead of better. I replaced 1 hour of scrolling with 1 hour of walking. No headphones. Just me, outside, feeling like a human being instead of a content sponge. It didn't fix everything. I still snack when I'm anxious. I still watch too much reality TV. But now I notice. I ask myself, is this filling me or numbing me? And sometimes I make a different choice. I don't live in perfect stillness. But I no longer drown in noise. And slowly, the rituals of avoidance are becoming rituals of return. To myself. To truth. To the life happening right in front of me, waiting for me to finally look up. It was Thanksgiving when it finally hit me, not the holiday cheer or the food coma, but something darker, deeper. The kind of realization that shows up quietly between the mashed potatoes and the polite small talk. My aunt leaned over during dinner and said, "You're always so even-keeled. Nothing ever seems to get to you." And I smiled like I always did, tight-lipped, eyes soft, shoulders politely tucked in. But inside? Something cracked. Because I'd heard that before. Over and over. "You're so calm. You're the strong one. You've always been so mature for your age." You know what that is code for. We noticed something was wrong, but you handled it so quietly that we decided not to ask. I left early that night, blaming traffic. I got into my car and just sat there, engine off, staring at nothing. The truth that had been circling me for years finally landed. My family didn't really know me. Not really. Because I never told them the truth. Not once. And worse, I inherited that from them. My mom cried once in front of me. Once. My dad didn't talk about his parents. Ever. My cousins all had curated Instagram lives, all jokes and filters and gym selfies. Our family gatherings were filled with jokes and food and exactly 0 moments of honest vulnerability. We didn't lie to each other with words. We lied with silence. And I'd learned early that silence was safer. That truth made people uncomfortable. That if you brought up anything real, pain, confusion, disappointment, you were seen as ungrateful. Or dramatic. Or worse, fragile. There's a human intelligence fact that chilled me the first time I heard it. Emotional suppression is correlated with increased physical health problems over time. Like actual, measurable physical effects, heart issues, insomnia, anxiety disorders. Turns out stuffing your feelings doesn't just hurt your relationships, it literally hurts your body. But that's what I did. I inherited a blueprint of emotional tight-lippedness. We didn't process. We persevered. I remember being 7 years old, watching my mom stare into the sink while doing dishes. She was crying, but not like in the movies, no sobbing or gasping. Just silent tears that she wiped away like water splashes. I asked what was wrong. She smiled and said, "Just tired, sweetie." That was our family's catch-all phrase. Just tired. It covered everything from heartbreak to existential dread. As I sat in the car that night, I replayed conversations in my head. Moments when I could have said more. Been more honest. But I hadn't. Because I didn't want to ruin the vibe. I didn't want to be the one to make things weird. And then it hit me, what if we all feel this way? What if everyone at that table had something unspoken? What if we were all waiting for someone else to go first? I decided to test it. A week later, I called my brother. He's not the heart-to-heart type. We usually talk in memes and fantasy football metaphors. But this time, I didn't do the usual dance. "I've been feeling really off lately," I said. "Like I don't know what I'm doing with my life. Like I'm pretending a lot." The silence on the other end was deafening. I almost filled it with a joke. Almost. Then he said, "Dude. Same." And that was it. The dam broke. He told me stuff I'd never heard before. About his anxiety. About how being a new dad terrified him. About how sometimes he looks at his life and wonders if he built the wrong one. We talked for 2 hours. It didn't fix everything. But it was real. There's this growing academic theory in family systems psychology. Generational denial transmission. It suggests that silence around emotional pain can be passed down like genetics. Not in the DNA, but in the dynamic. And unless someone breaks the pattern, the silence continues. I'm not trying to sound dramatic, but breaking that silence felt like emotional surgery. Like reaching into myself and pulling out something half-healed and letting it breathe. I started asking my parents different questions. Not just, "How are you?" but, "Did you ever feel lost in your 20s? What scared you most when we were growing up? What were your dreams before you had us?" Sometimes they answered. Sometimes they didn't. But the space opened. A little crack in the foundation of denial. I stopped playing my old role in the family. The calm one. The problem solver. The emotional sponge. I stopped giving updates that made me look good and started sharing the messy middle. I said things like, "I'm struggling. I feel like I'm faking it a lot. I don't know what I'm doing next." Not for shock value. Not to be dramatic. Just to be honest. And at first, people didn't know what to do with it. My mom got quiet. My aunt changed the subject. But a few weeks later, my cousin pulled me aside and said, "I've been feeling that way too." And we sat in her car, in the driveway, and cried. Not a lot. Not in a movie kind of way. Just two people letting the silence be honest for once. Since then, my relationships with my family aren't perfect. But they're realer. We still joke. We still avoid stuff sometimes. But there's a new layer now. A soft agreement that it's okay to not be okay. That we don't have to perform for each other. That maybe, just maybe, being a family means holding truth, not just history. Success looks so good on paper. I had the job. The salary. The clean apartment with the fake plant that never died and the bookshelf perfectly arranged by spine color. Because nothing screams. Got it together. Like rainbow-coated self-help books. My LinkedIn profile was pristine. My emails were crisp and filled with words like circling back and synergy. I wore blazers on video calls. I smiled. I delivered. And I was exhausted. Not physically. Existentially. Because somewhere along the way, I stopped asking what success felt like and only focused on what it looked like. I was chasing metrics, not meaning. I remember the day I got promoted. Everyone said congratulations. My phone blew up with, "You deserve this!" messages. I stared at the screen, blinking, waiting for the feeling to arrive. Joy? Pride? Something? Nothing. I ordered takeout that night. Opened a bottle of wine. Sat on the couch. And just sat. The award plaque they gave me was still in the gift bag. I didn't hang it up. I didn't even open the card. It's not that I wasn't grateful, it's that I wasn't present. Because here's the truth, behind the achievement was a person who wasn't proud, just relieved. Relieved it was over. Relieved I didn't fail. Relieved I could prove I was worthy for one more quarter. And that's not joy. That's survival with a side of applause. There's a human intelligence fact that stings a little. Our brains adapt to achievement incredibly fast, within days or even hours. What once felt impossible becomes the new normal shockingly quick. That raise you worked 6 months for? Feels standard by next Tuesday. That diploma? Shelf ornament by spring. It's called hedonic adaptation, and it's relentless. I kept telling myself I was building something. A career. A life. But really, I was just climbing a ladder I never paused to look down from. I didn't know where it led. I just knew stopping would look like failure. Sometimes I think about that when I'm staring at a spreadsheet, wondering why nothing I achieve ever feels as good as it should. Maybe I've been looking through the wrong lens altogether. The idea of success had been sold to me since I was a kid. Be impressive. Be busy. Be excellent. And I was. But I also couldn't sleep. I was anxious all the time. I faked enthusiasm in meetings and celebrated milestones with emojis, not actual joy. And the deeper truth? I was terrified to stop. Because if I wasn't successful, then who was I? Academic circles talk about this thing called achievement-based identity distortion. It's a mouthful, but the idea is simple. When you build your identity entirely around what you do, you lose the sense of who you are. I wasn't a person anymore. I was a resume in motion. So I started doing something that felt borderline illegal. I worked less. Not irresponsibly. Just honestly. I stopped pretending I had it all together. I said, "I don't know," in meetings. I stopped logging in early just to be seen as dedicated. I even, brace yourself, closed my laptop on time. It felt radical. And terrifying. And real. I also started asking dangerous little questions like, if I didn't need this job to impress anyone, would I still want it? What would I do if no one ever congratulated me for it? What kind of success would feel like peace, not pressure? The answers weren't always neat. Sometimes they were uncomfortable. But they were honest. And then one night I had dinner with a friend who worked a less impressive job. No corner office. No promotions. But she loved it. She talked about her coworkers like they were family. She looked tired, but not hollow. She asked me what I loved about my work. And I froze. Because I didn't have an answer. I had stats. I had titles. I had performance reviews. But love? That was harder to locate. I realized I hadn't felt real joy from my job in over a year. I was just performing competence. And I was very, very good at it. So I made a list. On the left, what I was doing. On the right, what I actually wanted. And the columns didn't match. Not even close. I still haven't quit my job. But I stopped pretending it's everything. I stopped tying my worth to its outcomes. I started saying things like, work is work, instead of, it's my passion. I started dreaming again, not about promotions, but about projects. Ideas. A life that had space for curiosity, not just efficiency. And slowly, the costume of success started to slip off. I still wear the blazer on Zoom sometimes. Still answer emails with a few too many exclamation points. But I'm not hiding behind it anymore. I don't need the title to feel valid. I don't need the applause to feel real. Because I'm not a job. I'm not a bullet point. I'm not a salary band. I'm a person. The day I didn't say, I'm fine, started like any other. Alarm. Snooze. Half-hearted morning routine. I looked like a human, mostly. Brushed hair. Clean shirt. I even packed a snack. It was all very functional, like I'd mastered the art of being okay enough to pass. But something in me was different that day. Not louder, just heavier. Like a coat I didn't remember putting on. I walked to the coffee shop near my apartment, the one with the chalkboard sign that always had some painfully cheerful pun like, "Espresso yourself." I hated those signs. They always made me feel like joy was something I had to fake in public. I got to the counter, ordered my usual, and the barista, Jess, we'd exchanged names once or twice, looked up from the register and said, "You good today?" Such a harmless question. Friendly. Routine. I was supposed to say, "Yeah, I'm good." You. I always did. But I didn't. I said, "Honestly? Not really." The words came out before I had time to put the mask on. I didn't mean to say them. They just fell out, like my body had decided it was done editing. And Jess blinked. Just for a second. Then she nodded slowly and said, "Yeah, me either." And then she handed me my coffee. No forced smile. No awkward silence. Just two people, in a tiny moment of truth, no performance required. It was microscopic. But it rearranged something in me. Because that's the lie we're trained to tell more than any other. I'm fine. It's the social duct tape. The verbal wallpaper. It smooths everything over, even when the structure underneath is buckling. But that day, I cracked the sentence open. And what came out wasn't chaos, it was relief. Later, I sat by the window with my coffee and tried to remember the last time I'd been fully honest in a casual conversation. Like actually said how I was, without filtering it into digestible pieces. And I couldn't remember. There's a human intelligence fact that makes this all worse. People can detect inauthenticity in micro-expressions in under 200 milliseconds. That means even when you say, "I'm fine," your face might already be giving you away before the words finish. And people don't even realize they're noticing, it just feels off. So all those, "I'm fine," I'd been tossing out like candy? People probably knew. They just didn't ask again. And to be fair, I didn't make it easy. I'd always played the role of the composed one. The funny one. The listener. People vented to me, not the other way around. I kept my answers light. My problems small. I thought that was considerate. I thought honesty would burden people. Turns out, it's disconnection that does that, not truth. You ever hear about feral children? Kids who grow up isolated, with no human contact, often in tragic or abusive environments. They struggle to learn language, even later in life. It's heartbreaking. But also revealing. Because language, honest language, is how we become human. Not just talking. Connecting. And when we lose the practice of honest expression, we become a little feral ourselves. I had been emotionally feral for years. Polished. Articulate. But caged behind my own social pleasantries. That night, something in me snapped again. Softly. I texted a friend, not one of my closest, but someone I trusted. And I said, "Can I be honest with you about something kind of random?" They said yes. And I told them I'd been feeling fake. Tired. Disconnected. I didn't ask for advice. I just put the words out there like breadcrumbs, hoping someone would follow them back to me. And they did. They said, "Thank you. I've been feeling the same." We talked for hours. And this time, I didn't perform. I didn't over-explain or minimize. I said things like, "I feel like I'm floating," and "I've been crying in the shower more than I care to admit." And instead of awkward silence, there was warmth. Validation. Shared humanness. There's a concept floating around in communication studies called mutual vulnerability activation. It means when one person shares honestly, it signals to the other person's nervous system that it's safe to do the same. I didn't just find that to be true, I felt it. Like opening a window and suddenly realizing how stuffy the room had been. After that, I started doing these little experiments. Telling the truth in small, low-stakes moments. Cashier asks how I'm doing? Kind of a weird day, honestly. Coworker says, "Hope you had a great weekend." I say, "Actually, it was kind of lonely, but I caught up on rest." Friend asks what I've been up to. "Mostly overthinking my entire life." You. And 90% of the time, people responded with their own version of truth. Turns out, no one's actually looking for perfection. They're looking for permission. Permission to be flawed. Confused. In progress. All the things we're trained to hide. I didn't become an oversharer. I wasn't spilling my trauma to every barista. But I stopped editing my emotional reality into something smoother. I started trusting that people could handle me, without the costume. And slowly, I noticed something shift. My anxiety lightened. My friendships deepened. Even my posture changed, like my body was no longer bracing for the weight of pretending. Because the truth? Saying, "I'm fine," every day is a burden. Not because it's a lie, but because it's lonely. And now, I don't say it unless it's true. Sometimes I say, "I'm in progress." Or, "I'm surviving." Or, "I'm weirdly hopeful today." All of those are more honest. All of those invite connection, not just courtesy. So next time someone asks, "How are you?" don't be reckless. Don't trauma dump. But maybe, just maybe, don't lie. The silence was terrifying at first. You know how your ears ring when you turn off a loud fan that's been on for hours? That's what it felt like inside me when I stopped curating my life. No more performance. No more pretending to love things I didn't. No more social media smiles that made me cringe a little when I saw them later. Just me, alone, without the noise. And what I found underneath wasn't peace. At least not right away. It was chaos. It was boredom. It was 1,000 little voices asking, "Now what?" I thought that once I stripped away the lies and distractions, I'd stumble into instant clarity. Like yes, here is my authentic self. Let me wear this linen robe and drink herbal tea while my inner child heals under a full moon. But no. There was no moon. No robe. Just the weird emptiness of not being anyone for a while. The scary part? I missed the noise. The hustle. The rush. Even the stress. There's a human intelligence fact that made me feel oddly seen. Our brains release dopamine when we multitask, even if the tasks are meaningless. That's right, scrolling while texting while eating chips tricks your brain into feeling productive. But remove all that stimulation, and your brain gets twitchy. Mine definitely did. I remember sitting in my room after deleting 3 apps. No Instagram. No Twitter. No endless scroll. And suddenly, I didn't know how to be alone with my own thoughts. I looked around like a guest in my own body. I picked up a book. Put it down. Played a podcast. Turned it off. Tried to write. Stared at the screen. Eventually, I laid on the floor and just existed. And slowly, painfully slowly, something began to settle. Not peace. Not yet. but a presence. Like I was no longer hovering over my life, commenting on it in my head like a sports announcer. I wasn't evaluating how I looked, how I sounded, what people might think. I was just there. There's an odd fact about wombats, yes, wombats, that I think about a lot. They poop in cubes. Scientists believe it's to prevent the feces from rolling away, helping them mark territory more effectively. Nature doesn't always optimize for beauty. It optimizes for function. That idea began to sink into my mind. Maybe life isn't supposed to be elegant or aesthetic. Maybe it's just supposed to work, for me. And so, I started rebuilding. Tiny things. I cooked meals without photographing them. I went on walks without headphones. I lit candles without posting about self-care. I wrote in a journal not because it was part of some optimized morning routine, but because I had things to say and no one to say them to. At first, it all felt empty. Like drinking water after years of soda. But eventually it started to taste honest. Here's the thing about quiet, it doesn't fill you with answers. It just makes space. Space for real questions to rise. Not the flashy ones like, "What's my 5-year plan?" But the simple, inconvenient ones like, "Do I actually enjoy being around the people I call friends? Am I still angry about something I've labeled fine for years? What do I do when there's no one to impress?" And this was the big one. If nothing in my life changed, could I still be content? I couldn't answer that right away. But I knew the answer wasn't yes. And that was the beginning. Academic research circles are currently split on a concept called radical authenticity. One side believes it leads to genuine happiness. The other warns that too much self-focus can result in narcissism or social disconnection. I think they're both right. Because truth, real truth, is a risk. And it's lonely at first. Like stepping off the stage while everyone else keeps performing. But the upside? You start to notice the people who aren't performing either. I began to attract different conversations. Softer, slower ones. People started telling me things they'd never admitted before. Like they sensed I had extra room for truth now. And I did. Because I wasn't filling it with performance anymore. One morning, I woke up and didn't reach for my phone. Not because of some trendy digital detox. Just because I didn't need to. That was a weirdly holy moment. Like I'd reclaimed the first 5 minutes of my consciousness for myself. The silence, once unbearable, had become something else. Sanctuary. Not all the time. I still had bad days. Days when I missed the dopamine loop. Days when I wanted someone to tell me what to do. Days when I felt like I was failing at realness, which, let me tell you, is hilariously ironic. But more often now, I felt like I was home. Not in a house. Not in a relationship. In myself. There's a phrase I read once. Stillness is not the absence of motion, it's the absence of panic. And that's what I had found under all the noise. Not a better version of me. Just me. Quiet. Unfinished. Present. Grief doesn't always wear black. Sometimes it wears your favorite hoodie. Sometimes it shows up when you're brushing your teeth or putting gas in your car. Sometimes it looks like nothing at all. I didn't expect to grieve the version of me I pretended to be. That hit me sideways. I thought once I stopped lying to myself, everything would feel better. Lighter. Freer. And it did, for a while. But then came the sadness. Thick and unfamiliar. Like saying goodbye to someone who had been with me for years, even if they hadn't been entirely real. I had curated that false self with so much care. All those years of shaping and polishing and editing. Smiling when I wanted to scream. Laughing when I wanted to leave. Holding back to seem agreeable. Pushing forward to seem ambitious. It wasn't all fake. Some of it was me. But a lot of it wasn't. And when I let it go, I expected to feel relief. What I didn't expect was the morning. It showed up in the quietest ways. Like walking past my closet and realizing half the clothes weren't mine anymore. Not because they didn't fit, but because they didn't feel like me. Or rereading old texts and seeing how many times I used phrases like, "No worries," or "Haha, totally," when I was actually seething inside. I looked at pictures of myself smiling, big, toothy grins at weddings and birthdays and brunches, and felt this strange disconnect. Like I was looking at a character. Like I had dressed up as someone I thought people wanted me to be. And here's the thing, that character had gotten me far. She got the jobs. She made the friends. She earned the compliments. But she also cost me something. Time. Truth. Energy. Intimacy. I didn't realize how tired I was until I stopped playing her. There's a human intelligence fact that stopped me cold one night. Our brains have a bias toward the familiar, even if the familiar is painful. That means we'll often choose habits, relationships, and identities that don't serve us, just because they're what we know. I'd been choosing her, this curated version of me, not because I loved her, but because she was safe. Predictable. Well-rehearsed. Letting her go wasn't a dramatic cinematic farewell. There was no background music. Just quiet moments of realization. Like the first time I said, "I don't like that," and didn't backpedal. Or the day I looked in the mirror without adjusting anything and simply whispered, "Hi," without the sarcasm. And then came the guilt. For the people who'd loved that version of me. The friends who were used to me always saying yes. The coworkers who relied on my fake positivity. The relationships I entered based on someone I wasn't quite. I kept asking myself, what if they don't like the real me? But the harder question was, what if I don't like the real me yet? That's when the grief deepened. Not just for who I pretended to be, but for the parts of me that never got a chance. The dreamer I silenced. The angry voice I softened. The version of me that wanted more but was told to be grateful. I had spent so long trimming myself down to fit into boxes that I forgot how much space I really took up. There's a growing concept in psychology called self-concept disintegration. It's when your previous identity falls apart before the new one forms. That liminal space is emotionally intense. You're not who you were, but you're not yet who you're becoming. And it's lonely as hell. I found myself pulling back from people. Not out of bitterness, but because I didn't know how to show up anymore. I didn't want to fake it. But I didn't have a new script yet. One friend texted, "You've been quiet lately. Everything okay?" And I wrote back, "I'm not sure who I am right now, so I'm keeping the volume low." She replied, "I get it. I'm here when you're ready." That message made me cry. Because slowly, I was learning that the people who love you for real don't need the performance. They don't need you to be upbeat, or inspiring, or on. They just need you to be honest. Even if that honesty sounds like, "I don't know," or "I'm figuring it out." Transformation doesn't erase everything. Some parts of the old self survive. And maybe that's true for us too. I'm not trying to erase the old me. She kept me safe. She got me through years where authenticity felt impossible. She survived in ways I didn't fully understand until now. So I'm learning to thank her. Not with sarcasm. With gentleness. "Thank you?" I whisper sometimes, when I catch myself about to fake a smile and choose not to. But I've got it from here. It's still messy. I still have moments when I want to slip back into the costume. Especially when I'm nervous or unsure. It's muscle memory. But more often now, I choose truth over image. Quiet over performance. Presence over applause. And grief, I've learned, isn't just about what you lose. It's about what you finally make space for. I didn't expect the mirror to change. It was still the same rectangle above my bathroom sink. Same lighting. Same toothpaste smudges near the corners. But after everything, after the unraveling, the silence, the small rebellions, I looked into it one morning and something had shifted. I didn't flinch. That was new. I used to glance at my reflection like it was a task. A box to check. Hair okay? Shirt unwrinkled? Smile presentable? Move on. I wasn't really looking, I was inspecting. Polishing. Editing. I had become an expert in disguising fatigue, in softening disappointment, in adjusting my face to meet the expectations I imagined existed. But now, I just looked. There I was. No filters. No prep. Just a face. My face. With uneven eyebrows, with a shadow of sleep still lingering in my eyes. A little older than I used to feel. A little softer somehow. But something in the gaze was different. I wasn't looking to correct. I was looking to connect. And that felt sacred. There's a human intelligence fact that I think about often. Your brain literally does not recognize your face the way others do. You're seeing a mirrored image, flipped, distorted by your own bias, loaded with years of internal commentary. Other people see you more clearly than you do. But that morning, I saw something closer to the truth. Not perfection. Not beauty in the conventional sense. But presence. There's a kindness and honest recognition. A kind of quiet reunion. Me to me, hey. You're still here. I see you now. And I think, I forgave myself in that moment. Not all at once. Not in a dramatic, I am healed way. But in a soft, almost accidental breath. Like letting go of a bag I didn't know I was carrying. All the apologies I owed myself slowly bubbled to the surface. I'm sorry for the years I spent trying to be someone else. I'm sorry for talking to myself in a voice I wouldn't use on a stranger. I'm sorry for trusting every opinion but my own. I'm sorry for calling survival strength when I was actually just scared. I didn't need to earn forgiveness. I just had to stop resisting it. There's this idea in academic circles called self-reconciliation theory. It's the process of integrating parts of yourself that were previously rejected or disowned. It's about owning your own contradictions, your flaws, your mess, your beauty. It's not about fixing, it's about welcoming. I used to think I had to change to love myself. Now I think I have to love myself in order to change. Big difference. After that morning, I started meeting my own eyes more often. During brushing teeth. Passing windows. The dreaded front-facing camera. Not in a vain way, just in a human way. Like, oh hey, there you are again. Let's do today together. And I stopped saying terrible things under my breath. You know the kind. God, you look awful today. Why are you like this? No wonder people leave. Those whispers used to feel like background noise. Now they feel like insults. Because once you start telling the truth, it gets harder to tolerate cruelty, even from yourself. I replaced those whispers with gentler ones. Not delusions. Just better questions. What do you need right now? How can I be kinder today? What would I say if a friend felt this way? And slowly, that voice inside, the one that used to police and punish, started to shift. It became a teammate. Not always cheerful. But fair. Calm. Honest. It's funny. I thought being honest with myself would mean holding a mirror to my failures. What I didn't expect was to also see my strength. The quiet ways I kept showing up. The courage it took to unravel. The beauty in not giving up. Now, when I stand in front of the mirror, I don't need to psych myself up. I don't need affirmations that feel like lies. I don't even need to like what I see every time. But I do need to be present. To meet my own eyes and say, you're okay. You're enough. We're in this together. Some days I still forget. Some days the old habits creep in. The fake smile. The flinch. The noise. But now I catch it sooner. I come back faster. I remember. And maybe that's what healing really is, not becoming someone new, but finally seeing who's been there all along, under the noise, waiting for your eyes to meet. Success looks different now. Not like a job title. Not like a trophy. Not like a highlight reel. More like a Sunday morning where I don't feel the need to check my phone the second I wake up. Or a conversation where I say exactly what I mean, even if it's messy. Or the strange quiet peace of going to bed and realizing, I didn't pretend today. I used to chase success like it was a person I was trying to impress. Polished shoes. Smiling face. Tense jaw. I measured everything: productivity, output, how many notifications I had, how many things I could cross off a list. I loved lists. Because they made it seem like life was controllable, trackable, winnable. But the truth? I was playing a game I didn't even like, on a scoreboard I didn't believe in. Now, success feels softer. Quieter. Stranger, honestly. It looks like choosing joy over approval. Truth over applause. And man, that's not easy. Approval is addictive. It's everywhere. A comment. A like. A raised eyebrow from someone you respect. A compliment that makes you walk taller even when you didn't ask for it. Applause has this magnetic pull. And I used to think it meant I was doing something right. But now I ask, right for who? Here's a human intelligence fact that changed how I see all of this. The reward centers in the brain light up more in response to social validation than even money in some studies. We are wired to chase approval. It's not vanity, it's survival. For our ancestors, being liked meant being fed, protected, kept alive. But that wiring can become a trap. Especially now. Especially online. Especially when everything feels like a performance for a crowd that may or may not even care. There was a moment, tiny, forgettable to anyone else, when I felt the shift. I was getting dressed to meet someone. I reached for a shirt I knew they liked. Then I paused. I looked at it, looked at myself, and asked, "But do I like it?" I didn't. So I wore something else. That was it. Just a shirt. But it felt like rebellion. And the more I did that, tiny choices, aligned with what I actually wanted, the more I felt like I was returning to myself. Choosing for me. Not for the version of me I thought would be most palatable. There's a growing debate in positive psychology around authentic happiness versus constructed happiness. The former comes from internal alignment, doing what feels true. The latter comes from external reinforcement, doing what gets you praise. Both can feel good. But only one lasts. I used to chase constructed happiness. I built routines, followed systems, read all the 10 Habits of Successful People articles. And I got good at it. But it always felt like I was borrowing someone else's life. Now I chase quiet alignment. Do I want to go to this event? No? Then I don't. Do I actually care about this argument? Not really? Then I drop it. Do I like this version of myself right now? Yes? Then I stay here a while. It's not glamorous. It doesn't get as many claps. But it gives me something better: peace. I had a conversation recently with someone from my past, someone who knew the version of me I'd outgrown. They said, "You've changed." Not with all. Not with anger. Just observation. And I smiled and said, "I know." Because the goal used to be staying consistent. Like being the same person over time was proof of integrity. But now I realize consistency isn't the goal. Congruency is. Aligning with truth, even when the truth evolves. So yes, I've changed. I'm slower now. Not in energy, just in urgency. I don't need to reply instantly. I don't need to impress instantly. I don't need to be understood by everyone in the room. I'm kinder to myself. I sleep more. I laugh more. Sometimes I cry just because it feels honest. And when I get nervous, I pause instead of performing. A few weeks ago, I found myself in a conversation with someone who clearly didn't like me. And for the first time in years, I didn't panic. I didn't contort myself. I didn't double down on charm. I just let them not like me. And I liked me enough for the both of us. That's success now. It doesn't sparkle. It doesn't trend. But it's mine. Fully. Finally. I used to think the end goal was happiness. That if I peeled back all the lies, fixed all the habits, and healed all the parts of me that were quietly breaking, I'd arrive somewhere permanent. A place of uninterrupted joy. A tidy version of life where I finally had the answers. But now that I've stopped lying to myself, I realize life doesn't get solved. It just gets clearer. And once things are clear, nothing looks the same. I walk through the world differently now. Not with swagger. Not with certainty. Just aware. I notice what I used to ignore. The tension in a conversation. The way someone's eyes flick away when they're lying to themselves. The way mine used to do the same. I notice how often people say, just tired, when what they really mean is emotionally drained, or lonely, or aching quietly in a way they don't have words for. I hear it now, the coded language of people who haven't made peace with their own truth yet. And I don't judge them. I recognize them. Because that used to be me. There's a human intelligence fact that lingers in my brain more than I'd like. The average adult spends 47% of their waking life lost in thought, not present, not here. Almost half of our lives, lived on autopilot. And now that I've woken up, I can feel how much I was missing before. So much beauty was lost in the pretending. Sunsets I didn't really see. Compliments I couldn't accept. Friends I couldn't fully let in. Laughter that sounded real but was hollow on the inside. But I don't grieve that anymore. I'm too busy noticing what's different now. A few weeks ago, I sat across from someone and told them exactly how I felt. Not a dramatic confession. Not a TikTok moment. Just honest words, gently spoken. And I didn't rehearse them. I didn't say them for effect. I said them because they were true. And they stayed. Not because I said it perfectly, but because I said it authentically. That's what happens when you stop lying to yourself. People stop lying to you too. You attract different energy. Not louder people. Not shinier opportunities. But truer ones. The friend who doesn't need a filter to be funny. The job that fits who you are, not who you pretend to be. The quiet evening that fills you up more than any party ever did. There's a phrase in psychology being debated right now called emotional congruence. It's the alignment of your inner experience with your outer expression. Some researchers say it's essential for well-being. Others think too much honesty can damage relationships. Here's what I think. Emotional congruence isn't about saying everything, it's about not hiding the important things. I don't share every thought now. I'm not a confessional machine. But when I say, I'm okay, I mean it. And when I'm not, I have people I can tell. Even if I have to say, I don't know what I'm feeling, but I think I just need someone to sit with me. Life after the lies is quieter. Less impressive, maybe, but more honest. And in that honesty, I've found the only thing that ever really mattered: freedom. Freedom from the performance. Freedom from the fear. Freedom to choose how to show up, who to love, when to walk away. I still have moments. Doubts. Days when the noise creeps back in. When I wonder if I'm doing enough. Being enough. But now I meet those moments with gentleness, not panic. I ask, is this thought true? And if it's not, I let it go. The heart has its own independent nervous system, often called the heart brain. It can sense, feel, and respond before the brain even processes a situation. It literally knows before we do. And I think that's what I've tapped into, something quieter than thought, deeper than logic. Something that says, this is right. This is you. You can stay. I've stopped chasing versions of myself that only look good from the outside. I've stopped collecting gold stars from people I don't respect. I've stopped editing my personality depending on the room. And most importantly, I've stopped abandoning myself just to keep the peace. Life after the lies isn't perfect. It's not even comfortable, half the time. But it's real. And real, I've found, is enough. Actually, it's more than enough. It's everything. So here we are. 15 parts later. A few thousand words, a few thousand truths. If you've made it this far, thank you, for sitting with me, for thinking quietly, for being open to hearing things you may have needed all along. What would happen if you stopped lying to yourself? You wouldn't shatter. You wouldn't fall apart permanently. But you would be forced to shed some things, versions of you that were never real, relationships built on performance, routines that numbed instead of nurtured. It wouldn't be easy. It wouldn't be clean. But it would be worth it. You'd start to hear yourself again, not the noise, not the roles, not the curated version. Just you. Raw. Confused. Honest. Brilliant in ways you forgot to notice. There's a softness that comes after truth. Like exhaling after holding your breath for years. You begin to live, not louder, but deeper. You choose things not because they impress, but because they align. You look in the mirror and meet your own eyes with something that looks a little like grace. And one day, you realize the life you're living isn't made of lies anymore. It's made of small, true things. Quiet moments. Real laughter. Love that isn't earned, it's received. So go gently. Tell yourself the truth. Let go of the noise. You're not a performance. You're a person. And that's more than enough.